Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your sharing has tipped the sugar scale and turned into oversharing. But have no fear, princess. Geico has something worth sharing with your internet kingdom, like how you could save hundreds on your car insurance just by visiting geico.com. No magic wand required. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
There's some dangerous, large carnivore out there.
And I saw that bird pick a young deer off the road and fly away.
And it was just about getting dark, and we started panicking, running down this ridge, not really having any clue what was throwing rocks in our vicinity, good-sized rocks. And I stopped long enough to get a 357 out of my backpack and look back, and that's when I saw it. I saw one.
For a week, the town of Defiance was being harassed by a werewolf. And it's actually attacked 2 railroad workers, killed livestock, just a lot of weird stuff that was going on.
And welcome, everybody, to another episode of Monster X Radio. This is your host, Shane Corson. And, of course, Monster X is brought to you by Sasquatch Coffee. Have you tried it yet? And if you haven't, I suggest you do, because it's fantastic coffee. I quite honestly, don't go out into, the field without it. I don't go in the field without coffee, period, but this is my go-to coffee, whether I'm in the field or at home, so I suggest you try it. Having said that, folks, I'm really excited tonight. Because I get to bring on as a guest to the show a fantastic researcher, a really nice guy, and someone who brings a lot to the table, but also the owner of Sasquatch Coffee. And like I said, an all-around great guy, and somebody that has taught me so much that it's a pleasure to be in the field with and just be in his presence. And I know I'm building and blowing up his head here, but it's true. And it's a pleasure to do this show with my good friend and researcher, Gunnar Monson. I can't say enough about the guy. And it's, like I said, a pleasure to have him on the show this evening. And I'm going to get right to it because, he's the guest tonight, but he's also the co-host. So, Gunnar Monson, the man, the mystery, how are you doing?
Good. I was wondering who the guest was today because I'm like, who is that guy? I want to hear this guy.
Yeah. Just some guy. Some guy.
Yeah, some guy.
Yeah, but no, it's been on my mind to interview you because, usually you're the guy behind the mic or the guy in the field with me who has a lot to say and a lot to share and a lot to offer. But, for those listening to Monster X, they really don't, I think, maybe some of them do, but they really don't know Gunnar Monson like I do. They just don't. And I think it's important. You interviewed me a while back, and I really didn't want to do it. And it was a great interview, I thought, and a really good guest. But
it was awesome.
But seriously, I really wanted to have you on and interview you, and because I think it's important that the audience knows who's behind the mic and what they're about, and we proclaim and to be researchers and students of the subject and everything else. So this is why you're here, and I'm looking forward to this interview. I'm going to grill you. We were joking earlier about this. I'm going to grill you. I'm really not, but
no.
Yes, I am.
Well, you had mentioned waterboarding, so I'm actually wearing my dry fit clothing today. I have a nice onesie that so waterboard away.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, Gunnar, one of the things that you do to open up a show with a guest involved in this research is to ask them a question, and that question is, what the heck got you into this subject matter? What brought you into the world of Sasquatch? Where did your interest come from?
Well, it's interesting because I always think there's like three doorways into Bigfooting that I've found. One is people have a confirmation encounter. They see a Bigfoot, and there's then some people like that. It's a one-time deal, and they move on with their lives, and other people become obsessed with the subject. I mean, they want to know what the nature of what they saw was, something that didn't exist before. The second way is through, and it's the way that I came into Bigfooting as a kid. I always had a kind of a curious nature. I liked all kinds of things that were mysterious. And, of course, I grew up in Oregon, so we had our own monster, per se, or our own unknown creature in our backyard, and that was Bigfoot. That growing up, I read the John Green books, watched In Search of, they had a Sasquatch movie that they actually showed in the theater in Portland, and afterwards they gave out stills from the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and that was really interesting to me. I mean, it just the idea that there was an unknown giant ape, per se, running around the woods that we couldn't, people got glimpses of and found footprints, and but that was kind of my entry in. I grew up, got away from it, and then when I first got on the internet, right after Al Gore invented it, one of the first things that I looked up was Bigfoot, and this was way back before, when I was young, before Facebook, and there was a chat list, and I got on this chat list, and I know it was ran by Henry Franzoni. Excuse me. I know that Matt Moneymaker was on that chat list, and this was even pre-BFRO, and was on that and chatted with people about Bigfoot and stuff and reports, and then at some point Henry shut that down and kind of went to the side, and then sometime later on I found the BFRO. Excuse me. And that was fairly early in after the Matt had started BFRO. I was there through all the mass exodus of people and infighting, but I actually was there pre public expeditions. I remember when it was being discussed, hey, I have this idea to get a bunch of people together and everybody put in a certain amount of money, and then we'll use that money to buy equipment, and that was the original concept for the public expeditions for the BFRO, and it changed from that to I think kind of a more of an enterprise where it was a money-making thing. So I actually went on a BFRO expedition up in Washington in the Mount Adams area not too long before they found the Skookum cast. I went up there with, I don't know, there was maybe 20 people or something, and didn't have anything happen at that expedition. I ended up going on and in between that time, they had the expedition where they found the Skookum cast, which kind of continued to fuel my interest in the subject. And then I went on a expedition to New Mexico, which was an interesting experience. And I actually had Matt Moneymaker riding around with me during the time that I was there, because I had a rental car and he didn't. I joked and I said that, Matt and I took a shower with Matt, because we actually went to a truck stop. We took them separately, by the way. But we hung out during that time, and he invited me to be an investigator for the BFRO, which I did for quite some time. I'm going to take a breath now.
Yeah. So for the listening audience, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of what the BFRO is, Bigfoot Field or Research Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you truly, Gunnar, were there at the beginning of the BFRO. You're
close.
kind of pretty dang close before,
mm-hmm.
and then got involved, with it. How long were you a member of the BFRO?
Well, I don't know if they've ever actually taken me out. I kind of became inactive about 3 years ago, but probably I'd say going on 10 years. I was an active investigator for the BFRO.
Yeah. I mean, and being a part of the BFRO at that time, what were some of the things? Where were some of the trips where did you go? What was expected out of you? I think a lot of people don't understand the BFRO when it comes to being a researcher. What did that involve?
Well, the idea behind it, is if you're a investigator, is there's a place called Flats in the BFRO, which is where reports go before they're investigated. So basically, the raw reports go into Flats, and different investigators take responsibility for investigating these reports. And let me tell you, there's always a backlog of reports. At least there was when I was an active investigator. Way more reports come in than can be handled. Obviously, it's a volunteer organization, and there's some fans. It was a great experience for me being a BFRO member and investigator. I got to meet cool witnesses, talk and go on investigations. I went, and that's where I met David Ellis, who's with the Olympic Project now, and Scott Taylor. In fact, I investigated a report up in out of Aberdeen with David and John Callender, and it was one that ended up not being published. I did find there was a little bit of censorship if things didn't fit within a certain parameter, because the investigation that we did up there out of Aberdeen, the witness, the account had actually, or the encounter had happened like 10 years previously, and the area by there had been logged at that time, and there was a particular stump. The gentleman and his son or grandson, I can't remember, were riding on an 3-wheeler, and they were switching positions with the white Bigfoot supposedly was sitting there in some red clay, stood up, took off, and there was actually a stump that still existed when we got there. Well, when we measured it, and the stump supposedly hit it like at the shoulders. So this Bigfoot would have been, and David Ellis would correct me if I was wrong, because I remember when I said this, the estimated height I think was like 14 feet. I think it would have been, and for me that was even a stretch. But that report report because of that. It didn't fit in a certain criteria. 14-foot Bigfoot was not acceptable. So that report did not get published publicly. So there is kind of a boneyard of reports that sometimes that people, that reports got investigated and they're not released publicly because they don't. That was my experience, which was a little frustrating because I thought, that's the report. I mean that. It was a stretch for me as an investigator and as somebody, like 14-foot. How does a 14-foot tall white Bigfoot hide? But that was the encounter. So.
Right.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how many? I mean, the flats.
Mm-hmm.
This area where these reports are sent and vetted through, and researchers pick up. I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's an area. They would obviously go, into an area of interest that these reports are being sent to. I mean, they're going out to look at these reports in the flats, and if it's close to them,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine they go and research them
Right.
there. How many? There's got to be a lot of reports in the flats, right, that aren't investigated because of time and of importance, at least seen to the researcher and the lack of researchers, possibly.
Well, right. Like I was saying, it's a volunteer organization, so there was my experience. There was always a backlog of reports in flats. I mean, hundreds of reports that hadn't been investigated. We're waiting for somebody to take them on and do the investigation. I know there were occasions where people did phone interviews with people. I remember because there was a report here in Oregon that of a sighting on the beach near, fairly close to where I live now, and it was actually investigated, if I remember right, by somebody in Florida. So they had called the witness and the investigation over the phone. So.
Yeah. What's amazing to me is that, and I'm sure I've heard this, that there are so many, well, obviously a lot of reports sent that just never get investigated. And you mentioned hundreds. That's pretty dang interesting for the layman that doesn't know anything about this, or the flats, that are listening to the show, going, "There's that many reports not being investigated." That's pretty interesting stuff.
Oh yeah, it's cool because as an investigator, you could go in and read. I'd spend hours reading just the different reports in flats. It was kind of cool to have the access to the reports that hadn't ever made it to the public. And if anyone's been in and looked at the reports, the database for the BFRO, it's pretty extensive. There's thousands of reports that are posted that are public. Mm-hmm. And I had a tendency to like reports that were more recent than historical. It's a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of like a cold case. You may refer back to an older report to gain knowledge of a more recent report, kind of like a cold case sort of scenario. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's huge value in historical reports. In terms of a large database, looking and the Olympic Project does all that. Takes data, puts it in. I'm kind of a data nerd, so I like to see what patterns come out of, and Tom Baker and other members of the Olympic Project have done a fantastic job of taking a lot of reports and finding statistical information about it. What time of day are there spikes in what time of day that do sightings occur? In this location, and I mean it helps as we talk about the needle in the haystack with the moving needle. It helps narrow that, make that haystack a little bit smaller, and anything we can do. If you're a Bigfoot investigator and your goal is proving the existence of Bigfoot, predictability is a big asset that gives us a little bit more of a edge when we're chasing something that obviously is superior to us in the woods.
Right. Now, for me personally, the BFRO, especially the website and everything that's going on there, especially the reports, have been of great interest and help to me personally. I know the BFRO takes a lot of heat at times, but its database is huge and growing. There's always wins and losses to an organization, right? Now you have, just like you have with anything else in life, but with the BFRO you have really good researchers and you have some less than favorable researchers. But more specifically, the question I'll pose to you is, having left the BFRO, what did you take? What were the pros and cons for you? What did you take away of value, and what are your thoughts on the BFRO as a whole?
Oh, that is a loaded question. No,
Ka-ching.
I feel the waterboarding coming on.
Yeah, feel it?
Yeah. No, it's hard to breathe. To me, there's a lot of good in the BFR. Like you said, I met great people. And if you go through bigfooting in the Pacific Northwest, a vast majority of known Bigfoot researchers did their turn in the BFRO.
Did their time.
Right. I mean, Cliff was a BFRO investigator, or a member of the BFRO. I'm sure he was an investigator. Tom Powell was unceremoniously chucked out of the BFRO. Bobo, I don't know if he's still in the BFRO. I don't know their status unless they have got kicked out. Todd Neese was a member of the BFRO, and his lovely wife Diane. Or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if Todd was ever a member. Again, some of them. I know that Diane was.
Yeah, point being, there was a lot. I mean, and you're right.
Right.
A lot of the more well-known researchers, the more well-known researchers were at one time associated or a part of the BFRO.
There's a lot of them, and I'm sure there's a lot that weren't. But I'm a pretty positive person, and people get on Matt Moneymaker, and he can rub people the wrong way, and his character on TV is blown up to make him look a bit more of an ass than he actually is. I've been around Matt on several occasions, and we have a friendly relationship. We don't hang out, but I have been on Finding Bigfoot a couple times because the BFRO put out a request for people to come and participate. So I don't hold any ill feelings toward the BFRO. Really, my transition out of the BFRO was because I transitioned into the Tillamook Forest Research Group. We found an area that seems to have regular activity, and as much as I respect the fact of how the importance of investigating historical reports, it's a little bit of ambulance chasing. What they do on Finding Bigfoot. You go from one location, and then you go to the next location, and then you go to the next location, and that. I found an area with, and one of the things for me, as I've always said, is if I'm going to be involved with people Bigfooting, I just want to hang out with people that I like and enjoy their company, because a lot of times you go out Bigfooting, you're not going to have some incredible Bigfoot encounter. You're going to be hanging out with the people that you're in the field with. So it was really more that I wanted to focus on a single location or area, and we've had pretty good success in at least as having a lot of things happen that I can't explain by known animals, and to the point now that we've had, and the area that we're in has a historical a history of reports. So it's an area and it's fairly close to me, so I'm not driving 2 hours to go investigate a report that happened 10 years ago. I'm going up and with the intent of collecting data, having experience. I refer to it as the confirmation experience. When somebody sees a Bigfoot, there's no, that does it. It's proved in your mind. And until I think any reasonable person, for the most part, if you don't have that confirmation experience, you have to reserve some part of are they real? And there's that doorway of, I think, when somebody walks through and has that confirmation experience, that it goes from are they to what are they?
Right.
It is what is the nature of what I saw. I mean, how could these things exist in parallel to man, and us not know, not have conclusive proof. And it's the mystery part of that really still drives me now. Is like, it's cool. I would, then I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I want them to be proven. I get, for conservation purposes but in that, people say, well, we need to, and I'm on the no-kill side of the fence. I understand that it's going to take a body, or it's going to take a specimen, alive or dead, or really the only alternative that to proving the existence is a long-term, like Jane Goodall study where it's not fuzzy pictures, it's hardcore evidence that can be replicated and documented over a period of time with DNA and corroborating evidence with video, and so. But I don't want to be the one to shoot one. I understand, and that's just a personal choice. I understand. I'm friends with people that would like to know that the only way we're going to get, and they're willing to go shoot one to prove them, and that's their choice too. Good luck. I mean, if it was an easy thing to do, it had already been done. So.
Right. Yeah. So you depart from the BFRO, and
as far as I know, yeah. They
yeah.
didn't send me any letter in the mail. I never received confirmation.
Well, you're no longer working with the BFRO per se. So.
Correct.
Yeah. So explain, and obviously I know this because I'm a member, but explain exactly how the your transition from the BFRO. And I remember the day. I remember you telling me you were going to leave the BFRO, and I was like, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to. And explain how that transition transpired into the Tillamook Forest Group, and those. How did that all come into fruition, and how did the members come to be? Who was involved?
This is interesting, and I was still an active member of the BFRO at the time, and I wasn't an active investigator, and that was part of it too, as my decision to leave the BFRO or step down, is because I wasn't really contributing anything to the BFRO at that point. I wasn't an active investigator. I would periodically go in and read reports, and that was the initial thing that happened that started the Tillamook Forest Research Group. Is there was a report in an area that I was interested in, or I always kind of had an interest in. It's an area, that's fairly close to me, and it had basically all the reports that I was aware of in that particular area were in the area where this report came from. And it was, I guess, the report was like a year old. And it involved a gentleman who had actually made the report, whose daughter had been out with some friends camping and had something yell at them, whooping and howling at them for like, I want to say 2 hours. I can't remember that time frame. Do you remember off the top of your head what that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
it was roughly 2 hours. Yeah.
Right. So for a couple hours, and then the next night, I believe it started up again. One of the people that were with the witness yelled, "Shut up, Bigfoot," and it stopped. And I thought that was amusing because apparently Bigfoot knows their name. I wonder if they yelled, "Hey, Jack, knock it off," if it would have stopped. But so that report was submitted to the BFRO. An investigator who became part of the Tillamook Forest group and is still an active investigator for the BFRO, Cindy Cadell, and her husband met with the witness's father. In fact, I think first, and this gentleman is Larry Turner, who is also a member, as our good friend, and one of the founding members of the Tillamook Forest Research Group. And I believe he and his boss and his friend Mark went up there the next weekend and recorded some screams back and forth. And then the next weekend, Cindy and her husband Jared met Mark and Larry up there, and they had some more screams that went on. And then so typically what would happen, in a BFR report, or anytime you're investigating one particular report, it gets, basically you do the report, it gets filed away, and that's basically kind of it. But, the witness goes back to their life, and the investigator goes back to their life, and that's it. And that, except in this case, you had a kind of obsessive guy in Larry who had it, interestingly, was continued, he and his friend Mark continued to go to the location from I think this initially took place like at the end of August. Well, all that fall and winter and spring and the next summer, they continued to go back to the location with frequency, had more stuff happen, found a muddy footprint, found some other audio stuff happen. And so I read the report, was interested in it. I got a hold of Cindy, who I had never met, but I think we were friends online because we were Facebook friends. And I actually then met her at Guy Edwards' Hot Squatch.
Right.
And I asked, all I did was ask Cindy if she'd tell me what the location was, because it was vague in the report. And she did better than that. She actually arranged for Larry and herself, and I didn't know who all was showing up the day that we arranged to meet up there and look at the area and camp out overnight. So I show up. I'm driving up there in this area. There's a lot of ATV trails, and I'm driving up, and I'm hearing gunfire, and I'm hearing ATVs, and I'm thinking there's no stinking way. And that's not the exact word I was thinking at the time, but I'm thinking there is no way that Bigfoots are hanging out in this area. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I pull up, I get out, and this guy in his camel came up and introduced himself. I'm Larry. And I was a little cautious. I'm always, when you're meeting somebody new and they have a Bigfoot story and some, you're kind of sizing the person up as, you know, are they BSing me but we got along, you know. We spent Cindy showed up a while later, and we talked, and then they kind of had a routine of things that they did. It got to be dark. Larry had been out hunting, I believe, earlier, hiking, and tweaked his knees, so he stayed in our camp, and Cindy and I did this loop, and they would stop and knock on a particular tree, and then do a call, and then so we did that. Cindy did a call, Larry did a call, and then Cindy and I made our way back to camp. Didn't hear anything. Well, when we got back to camp, Larry said, well, when he did his call, he got some kind of response, that he had a howl or a scream from east of where we were camped. And so that's cool. You know, I'm still thinking there's no way that there's Bigfoot up here. I'm very pragmatic about stuff. I still will not today will tell you that of all the things that I've heard and experienced in our research area, I cannot say anything definitively is Bigfoot. I've not seen a Bigfoot. And I've heard some weird stuff that I can't explain by any known animal, but until I know that it's Bigfoot. I've heard knocks now. So anyway. So Larry had this fancy new recorder called a Taz Cam, and had a location that he would always put his Taz Cam. So he and I walk over to deploy his Taz Cam. It's first day that he was using it. So on our way over to deploy it, there's a scream from the same direction that Larry had heard his scream. And now my interest has peaked a little bit. You know, it didn't sound like coyote to me. It didn't sound, okay, that's interesting. And so we go back to camp and sit down and around campfire, and then it started. And basically what happened was, for the next 2 hours, it was about 10 o'clock when we deployed the recorder, and we sat down in our camp chairs, and for the next 2 hours, this audio stuff started in the east and moved through south of our campsite. Whoops and howls and screams and all. I mean, it was not constant, but moving. And my brain the whole time was like, okay, could it be people? You know, it didn't hear vehicle. It's not in an area where there's a lot of roads. And I had a bionic ear, which I was listening to, of course not recording with, but listening. And just about midnight, all of a sudden I was sitting next to Larry, listening with my bionic ear, and all of a sudden we refer to it as the crescendo. All of a sudden there's like all this racket, like whoops and screams and stuff. And the weird thing is, my brain I immediately think, well, maybe it is people, because I could hear, and it kind of was like samurai chatter, what they refer to as samurai chatter, but it sounded like somebody talking underneath all this whooping and screaming and stuff, and because I actually took my headset off and threw it so that I could hear what was going on, and that went on, for a short period of time, and then it stopped. No more whoops, no more hollers, no more screams, and Larry and I looked at each other, and it's funny because when that happened, Cindy had her grandson with her and was putting him in the tent during the crescendo. She had heard some of that, and this was going to be cool because we got this on a recorder. And Larry and I just looked at each other, because it's one of the interesting things is the statement Larry had made earlier today. One of these days I want to hear samurai chatter, and that was very much what it sounded like in amongst the other audio stuff that was going on there. And I'm sure my jaw hit the ground, and that was that incident hooked me on that area, and like, okay, I'll come. I think I'll come back here. The next morning, Larry went to retrieve his task, and we're excited to hear, and it recorded for about 2 seconds. And I seriously thought I was going to see a grown man cry, and that was, and I thought Larry might cry too, but but that incident, and like, okay, there's, and at that point it basically was Cindy and Jared. More Cindy, because Jared, I think, really Bigfoot's with Cindy because to do something together as a couple. It's not really his real area of interest, but so it was basically Cindy and Larry and I were going to work together, and I said, we need to make this a research area. And it was great because we were all very different. To me, I was just honored that, I appreciated that Cindy allowed me to come into her research area and have that experience. Because I've heard some weird stuff before, but that was the most Bigfooty thing that had ever happened to me. So
right. I'm going to cut you off a little bit and just backtrack a little bit. Now, I've heard some, this is before I got involved with the Tillamook group, and I was invited to the area and whatnot. And
I remember that.
Yeah, that was definitely nice. But, to give a background too, though, we have Cindy Cadell, and we have her husband, he's a cop, and he's one of the most skeptical guys in the field. And this particular event, I know he's talked to me about this, kind of blew his mind. To play devil's advocate, for those listening, they might be saying, as when I originally heard this, not the recording, or not what you guys reported, I thought, sounds very much like coyote activity. They'll yip, 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 and then they'll cut off. But the thing that was interesting to me was the amount of distance these sounds traveled. I mean, something was moving, and there was this chatter, quite unlike a coyote. And I've heard coyotes, and we've heard coyotes in the Tillamook area countless times. What was interesting to me was those involved listening to this, who are very experienced in the field and have heard all sorts of animals, saying that, wow, this was crazy. And I remember one of the things that you guys had said to me was it sounded like the general thought was it was almost like a hunting party. I remember that specifically. Yeah.
Well, and I'm still, I mean, like, I was blown away at the time. It's like, the other part of my mind is like, why would an animal be vocalized, especially an animal that is, trying to, it seems to want to remain undetected for the most part. When I thought about this, I believe it was on a Friday is when we met up there. Well, the 2 days immediately before that, we had very extreme weather with lightning and thunder and thunderstorms and the crescendo thing to me, and Larry, and that was kind of upon discussing it, it's like, if those are Bigfoot, why would they be making all that noise? And the conclusion was that our theory, or our best guess was, well, maybe they were hunting something. They're driving something to a choke point, and I mean, the distance that was covered, did not rule out any known animal to me. I mean, deer, elk, any animal could have moved that distance in 2 hours. I just didn't think it would make sense that it was people that were moving in the direction without the sound. It certainly wasn't people walking, and there was not vehicle noise during that time. So we did, and I, again, it's not something I say definitively. That was our best guess of what the sounds we could attribute to, if what we were listening to Bigfoot. I I do not state definitively that I heard Bigfoot. I heard something off the charts weird. Larry will say, you know, strange-o-meter. It was a 10 on my strange-o-meter. So it it was interesting enough to me to get me to come back. And so we then, you know, I've not to be protective of the area, but to maintain the integrity of the area. I requested that we not disclose the exact location, not name landmarks or whatever. And as far as I was concerned, it was basically by default I became the lead investigator of the Tillamook Forest Group. And Larry, we were all very deferential at the time. To me, I would have been happy if Cindy was the lead investigator, but she saw me as the senior BFRO person there, and it just became more of a, you know, if somebody's going to be the leader per se, then it ended up being me. I don't want it. I got the short stick. But it's been a really fun experience. We've added people. You know, we've had a few people leave. It was. I think Cindy was really open to sharing it with people, and there was that adjustment time of, well, how do we handle this? For me, the not making it, not broadcasting what we were doing and where we were doing it was more about maintaining the integrity of, if you're going to have a research area, that you don't just go broadcast, hey, we're going to, because I think, you know, you're already having to filter out. There are areas where there are other people in the area. So, and there happens to be a very popular show on Animal Planet that teaches people to go out in the woods and scream and yell and knock in trees.
Right.
So to say that I'm going to this specific area and I'm going to be doing Bigfoot research and make it a real public thing, I think increases the difficulty of vetting evidence, because you never know, you know, and so there was a whole process of what are we going to do, because there was no data collection up to that point. You know, there was basically a series of experiences that, and God bless Larry for being a bit obsessive and dedicated to, because if Larry had not continued to keep going for that year, it probably would have never happened.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I would never, you know, I was brought in kind of early on, and I would never have been there had it not been for Cindy and you and Larry, quite honestly, being invited out there.
Well, let's back up for a second. Actually, Cindy invited you. Okay. Larry and I had no idea you were coming.
Correct. Yeah,
because I remember. Yes, I do remember. Larry was very protective of the area initially.
I was one of the first people there, and he was not happy about it.
Right, and Cindy was very open and sharing of the location with other friends in the Bigfooting world, and that was a little bit, because I remember the first time that I met you, I pulled up and somebody was pouring gasoline to start a fire. And there's these big, huge flames shooting up, and you know, I didn't know Larry that well at that point, and he came off a little grumpy to me as who's a Shane guy, and it's funny, is now, you know, you guys are really good friends, and he calls you his Bigfoot son, and Larry was very protective, and Larry's perspective at that time was he wanted this to be taken seriously. And he wanted to get the best experts. Well, to him, the best experts in Bigfooting were the guys that he saw on TV. So can we get Cliff here? Can we get Moneymaker here? And I said, in all honesty, Larry, that's probably not going to happen. So so we developed, and this team of people. Jeff Southern is part of our team, and Barbara is still part of our team, so she's a little inactive. She's been very busy getting ready to graduate from school, and then she will be a biologist. And now Cindy and Jared have moved away, but
yeah.
So we have a good little group.
We do, and I was going to say, we some of the people involved now, there are amateur, including myself, researchers. By that I mean I don't have credentials. I have experiences. I'm an arborist. I'm a tracker. A lot of different things. But we do have some people like Cindy, who's an archaeologist. We have people like Barbara Oliveira, that she's biologist now, and we also have included into
she's
the
a scientist,
forest group.
damn it.
Yeah, I'm a scientist, but we do have people with credentials that maybe not be as experienced as some in the field, but bring a lot to the table. We got people we can vet to, John Bindernagel and Jeff Meldrum and others. We work right alongside the Olympic Project. I think it's important to note that, and Gunnar, you will agree, I believe, that part of the forming of the Tillamook Forest Group, and we cover a vast area. We're not just focused on just the Tillamook Forest area. One of my areas of interest, obviously, is the Mount Hood area where I had my experience, and that kind of gets into the world of the Tillamook group here. It gets added in, but we are very much a collaborative group. We work alongside other individuals and other groups to share information and kind of put pieces to the puzzle.
No, and that's I like my little sayings, and one of them is collaboration, not competition. I really seriously think that we'd be much further along in solving the mystery of whether this creature, and to you they exist. I mean, you've seen one. We'd be much further along if people worked together in the past. I think there's been a lot of you got people. I think there's been some ego bashing, and some certain people want to be the man in the past and the one that discovers. I mean, it's a big thing. You think about it, you bring the definitive proof of this species to the layman and scientists to the point that they can't deny it, and that is a shift for mankind. I mean, this is not an insect that we're finding or a butterfly. Yeah.
It's huge.
This is a land ape. If you and I'm an aper, I believe that they are. I've experienced nothing that tells me that they're anything other than an animal. I know I've talked to I've been out Bigfooting with Matt Johnson, and he is experiencing things that I did not experience in the same time and space. So, I mean, and the thing is, it's funny because I'm not that close-minded about woo-woo stuff, but I don't think that. I think that Bigfoot. I don't know if there's portals. I don't know if they're, but I don't think they were related to Bigfoot. That is my thing. And again, I think a reasonable person, until you experience that kind of activity, you're going to question whether or not that activity is real or imagined or made up. I mean, it's just really hard. I mean, we're already on a fringe topic.
Exactly.
We're the common man and woman is not giving any thought to Bigfoot, and if they do, it's the way that news processes it as entertainment, or it's Harry and the Hendersons, or oh cool, I watched Finding Bigfoot, and they didn't find him again, and but it's another leap to me to that they have paranormal abilities, and that they're coming through a portal. And I've said this: if Bigfoot travels by portal, I'm out. I'm done. It's in the story because, well, one, I'm a Christian, so that to me gets into some really weird stuff because I don't think that's Bigfooty. And believe me, I actually had this discussion with Matt Johnson. So it was like, dude, what if, and he has he has his beliefs and I have mine, and I don't mock other people's beliefs because or their alleged experiences because that's what they think. It's not been my experience, and if I see a Bigfoot step through a portal, I'm done. Bigfoot wins. I can't because I ain't going in the portal to chase him, and that means that Bigfoot has abilities that I can't fathom, and I'll let somebody else chase him through the portal.
Right. Now, Gunnar, do you think the fact that and I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm not going there. Like yourself, I'm not. You know myself. I'm in the woods like every week, every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I've never experienced anything like that. But do you think that, hypothetically speaking, of course, I'm not calling anybody out here, but that the fact that people can't get solid proof. I mean, a body, a really good video, a good trail cam picture. I mean, really solid. I'm not talking. There's very questionable ones out there. Some are very interesting. That because they can't, they eventually go, okay, I must be dealing with something paranormal or something that is beyond me. Do you think they tend to kind of lean towards that direction? I mean, or you think they're experiencing something of this nature? I mean, it's not something. I'll be honest with you, it's not something I like to talk about because I just don't buy it personally. I've never experienced anything like that. I've been in the woods and going to different areas a lot for a long frickin' time, and I have seen a Sasquatch. I have experienced some strange stuff that I can always assume is Sasquatch. Whether it's audio or in person, but I'm not there. I'm not close to being there.
You think? Why do I think that people? I have no idea, Shane. I mean, I cannot. I mean, unfortunately, I do not have Bigfoot's telepathic powers to read people's minds as to what their motive might be. I mean, if you can't be king of all things Bigfoot, maybe you can be king of all things paranormal Bigfoot. But there's some people that, to me, seem reasonably sound mind that feel that that's the case. But again, that's not, and I don't think the word belief in this subject. I think, of course, it's overused. I don't believe in Bigfoot. Bigfoot. It doesn't matter if I believe in Bigfoot or not. Bigfoot either exists or Bigfoot doesn't exist. That's all there is to it. Doesn't matter what belief has nothing to do with it. Belief is more about faith and your religion and that kind of thing than but I don't believe or disbelieve in Bigfoot. Bigfoot either exists or doesn't exist, independent of what I think.
Right, and so
I'm pretty sure Bigfoot doesn't give a rip about being proven to exist.
I don't think so either. Having said that, everything that you've not had this confirmation sighting or whatnot that you can say, okay, Bigfoot.
Yet.
I mean, there's something to it. I mean, I'm sold. I mean, this is it. You're a knower. You're not in my shoes. And I don't like being called a knower. I kind of hate that, but it is what it is. I mean, I know they exist. What they are, I will never. I don't know what they are, but I do know they exist. My curiosity moves into how they exist. What are they? That's where I'm at now.
You walk through the doorway.
Right, and you have not walked through that doorway yet. But what experiences have you had personally that lead you up to? And I'm also including reports in this question here. Reports that you've taken in, but also your personal experiences that lead you to think that this is more of a primate, and also that there's a huge chance that Sasquatch does in fact exist.
Well, that goes. I do not keep my interest in the subject of Bigfoot private. I mean, I founded a coffee company called the Sasquatch Coffee Company. So and I own a grocery store, the Food Basket in Garibaldi, Oregon. So stop by this weekend for Memorial Day. Get your beer. Okay, sorry, but I mean, I have Bigfoot stuff up in the store. I co-host a Bigfoot radio show, and I tell people about it. And every once in a while, somebody wants to rib me about Bigfoot, and I say, you know what, I had a gentleman who was a logger who said, I've been in the woods my whole life, and I've never seen blah blah blah. And I said, prove to me that they exist. And I'm like, you know what, I don't. You prove to me that they don't exist, because there is a preponderance of evidence and it comes down to this: if one piece of evidence is not fabricated or misidentified, then they exist. And you have to say they, because, and it's funny, I still have had people will occasionally have people ask, well, is it just Bigfoot? That they can't separate the fact that that's not a plural name, it's one entity. And I said, if you've got one, you've got to have. I mean, either it's the last one, and because of there's still a distribution of reports in more than one specific location, that means there's a population of them. You can guess whatever that population is, and that's all you can do is venture a guess. But if one piece of evidence is not fabricated or misidentified, then there is something that created that evidence. If it's audio footprint, something is leaving large human-like footprints around the globe. I'm sure if you plotted a bell curve of where population and reports, that'd be squattermetrics thing. I bet the distribution would look like where you would expect them. There's 0 in Hawaii. Then there's many in. And I'm sure there's a correlation between, because between woods and population.
Right. There's a map like that right now. If you put the map of the United States, just North America, or just United States on a map, and you look at all the forested areas and areas where they get rain, that's where the Sasquatch sightings are. And you bring up a good point.
There was an actual gap down the middle of the United States, where there was very few. Yeah. Right.
And you bring up a good point, though. If just one of those sightings are legit, and you're talking about the flats and the BFRO, well, that's the reported sightings, and there's hundreds that never get investigated. That's just the reported sightings. Think how many more are unreported or never shared. If even just one of those, or got something to it, well, hello. And that's what boggles my mind is that science really, I almost wish the BFRO and these other groups, including ourselves, if science wasn't really involved or enthusiastic about it, here you go. You guys do the legwork. You guys look at the reports. They don't want to. They don't want to because it's fringe, and they just can't fathom this being out there. And this is why John Bindernagel had such an issue.
I was just thinking of John.
Well, he comes to mind every time because here's a biologist out of Vancouver Island who's had his own not sighting, but he's found some phenomenal evidence. But even if he didn't find anything, he can look at the reports, the interviews, the witnesses, and the evidence out there and go, okay, there's something to this. We need to as a scientific community, look at this, and it boggles his mind that science is so adherent. They're like, no. And that's the biggest issue. It's not the fact that Sasquatch exists. It's that science won't get involved with the possibility.
Right. And really, and as a host of Monster X, I'd really love to have some people on that are outside the Bigfoot community. We've talked. There's a primatologist in Forest Grove that teaches at. So if you're listening, and you know this gal that teaches, this professor that teaches primatology, because not only is she a primatologist, her area of interest has to do with audio, which for me, I mean, we've had a lot of audio stuff happen, some stuff that that blows me away. I mean, we had a recording of when you and Larry or I were up there, and you heard stuff moving at Suprenox, and then something, and then when we listened to the recorder that was actually in camp.
Pretty close to camp.
It was the recorder that I had said in camp. We hear brush moving, and then something pinged, and then we hear, and I not to be crass, but I about crapped myself. I mean, that to me was one of those what the, and then I proceeded to erase that recording in my excitement of listening to it over and over again.
Yeah, the thing about that recording was, and I'll touch on this briefly just to give the audience a little bit of an idea, was that you that night you were sleeping in your Jeep, usually tented, but you were sleeping in your Jeep. Larry was out. I could hear him snoring, and I heard a knock, and this is a very loud knock down the road, and I was awake. That woke me up. I mean, I was kind of probably half asleep, and then a knock right above camp. And it sounded like wood on wood or something. Just a loud knock. And I hadn't heard a knock like that. This was a couple years ago, but I hadn't heard a knock like that until from my initial experience. And I stayed awake, and there was nothing other than 20 minutes. I wouldn't say 10 to 15 minutes later, there was a big metal ping in our camp, and I thought, there's something in our camp. Holy moly. What's going on? So I'm listening, nothing. And so I eventually fall asleep. And you, fortunately, Gunnar, had, we had audio out there, but nothing in camp other than your audio recorder. And when we listened back to the audio recorder, we picked up all of that. We heard the ping, but what we heard before the ping, the metal sound, which I thought was maybe a pot being hit or a pan, was actually a part of Larry's truck. You heard something bounce off the ground. It took us a while to
figure that out. Because we went around dinging on everything that was metal, trying to make. And the best description was that it sounded like a cowbell. And we need more cowbell.
Yeah, we need more cowbell. But it was listening to the audio, you could hear something hit the ground and bounce and hit something metal, and you hear this, and you heard brush movement, and that fell right in line. That fell right in line with we're not just researching this area on a whim. Obviously, we've had other experiences, but this area historically has had rocks thrown into camps. There was sightings. That whole area there got a ton of sightings, whether it's within 5 miles. So it's that to me was when was very compelling, interesting. I just want to give the audience a little background on that because that to me it had been a lull up until then. And then I heard that, I was like, wow, and now, come last weekend, or 2 weeks ago, I was out there and recorded something in the same sounds other than, the very, I call them grunts, and something bipedal walking by my recorder. I mean, it's very interesting. Did I see it walk by my recorder? No. But I know the area, and I know the animals in the area, and, it's pretty awesome to me. Pretty awesome.
And the thing is we don't just listen to audio. Initially,
good point.
Again, bless Larry's heart. Larry would take the recordings and listen to them. And we might have initially 1 or 2 recorders out there, that, and we learned something from the deletion of that kind of epic recording. We jokingly called it the Gunnar protocol, is that when we would not leave without uploading, it's been a learning experience. And we learned the first, when I show up, and I'm usually late, the first thing I do when I get out of my Jeep is say, do we have audio? And that's part of our protocol, is to start recording, because we've missed things by not recording when we get there. We've missed things that have happened after we turn the recorders off, thinking everything's done for the but now the progression was, and back to your point about collaboration, is one of the huge steps forward that the Tillamook group made was making the association with the Olympic Project. And I was familiar with Derek Randall's by reputation. We knew common people. I believe Derek was even in the BFRO. I used to go to, I went to 3 expeditions up past where the Olympic project's centered now, out of, I can't even remember the name of the little town there, but there was an area that a group went there, and then we had weird stuff happen then, but we were invited to attend a public expedition like there was this last weekend for the Olympic project, and several of the Tillamook members went, and it was a cool experience, and subsequently we were invited to become members of the Olympic project, and Derek and David Ellis and Tom Baker, but I knew David from a long time ago, and I knew when we were going up, before we went up there, I was telling Larry, I want you to meet David. He's into audio, and it was funny, as soon as they were like, they immediately were talking and sharing notes, and David helped get us to where we were actually analyzing the audio, not just listening to it for weird sounds. That's interesting in itself, but it doesn't really go anywhere if you're just listening to recordings. We now analyze the audio through Sonic Visualizer and look for anomalies. We know, you listen to enough audio, you know what all the known stuff is, and you know what isn't the known stuff. So, and there's actually a database of all kinds of known animals that you can look at to compare your not known stuff. And, audio is great because it's a very passive way to collect data. And if what we've recorded in our research area is indeed Bigfoot, they don't seem to be intimidated by audio. We, on occasion, thought, it sounded like something actually picked up or sniffed the audio recorders different times. It doesn't seem to be Sasquatch repellent. And nothing has to walk directly by a recorder to catch a distant call. So something, isn't even seeing your audio recorder, and they don't know that you're recording them. I don't think they have any concept, of a recorder. So, which then, makes me wonder why people think that they know what a camera is.
Right.
It might look a little weird but anyway, it's we don't just, but it's an easy way to collect a lot of data, but it also is, you have to have somebody, and again, back to Larry and you, that is willing to sit there and go through that audio and find the things, the nuggets of possible weird stuff. I've had a lot of, I've had a whistle in front of me about within probably 50 yards. I know it was within 50 yards in the dark. That I don't know what it was, but it was interesting because it was in a time frame when you and Larry had a couple whistles in close proximity within a month of that happening. So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about one of the experiences that I was not present during, where you and Larry had gone out, were placing audio and had this tremendous amount of almost like a bass sounding. This bass was incredible, and I've heard the audio on it, and you guys have shared with other people, and they have no idea what it was, other than Larry feeling like you guys need to get out of there. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Larry refers to it as Jurassic Park night.
Yeah.
Larry sometimes has a flair for the dramatic, because to me, I that's a very specific thing where in Jurassic Park there's the T-Rex footprint and it's walking and it's shaking the water and you feel it. I did not feel any percussion per se. But Larry and I were meeting. We weren't actually going to camp up there that night. We were needing to go deploy a parabolic dish in the research area. Larry got a new parabolic dish. Let's go put it out and see what happens. Really dark night, pitch black, moonless night, and we went up a trail that's not in a direction we don't usually go after dark. We have a way. We'll move around in that area, but it's just not. We don't. It occurs to me that it was an area that we would go to or frequent at night, and we start walking out, and I hear a whistle, and it's kind of from our position. It's like southwest of where we're at, back towards where we were parked, and we proceed up the trail. And Larry hears a whistle, but it's also south, but it's east, so it's like from two different locations. And so we go off trail with the deploy the parabolic mic, and you kind of hear stuff and you just kind of, oh, that's interesting, and you deal about with what you're doing. But while we're off the trail and we're attaching this parabolic mic to a tree, I hear like a percussion sound, like, and to me it sounds like boom, boom, and that's probably not even doing it. It's just that there's more like a reverberation to it, and it's again south of where we're at. And I listen and I say, Larry, you hear that? And he hears it. We're like scratching our heads, and there are some roads that direction, and so I put it off to like, well, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like when somebody, like a kid's got their bass turned up on the stereo in their car, and so I kind of put it off to that, and like, okay, well, maybe that's what it is. But we continue. We go back to what we're doing. We finish, and we hear it again, and we walk back to the trail that we had come in on, and I like have the bright idea. So, well, let's turn our lights off and see what happens. We were both wearing headlamps, pitch black. I can't see my hand in front of my face, kind of black. And we hear the percussion again, but it's closer. and we turn our lights on, and Larry is always packing. He carries a sidearm, and he actually has his hand on his sidearm. And I've been up there a lot with Larry, and Larry is a consummate outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman, hiker. I mean, he's have a lot of experience outdoors. And he's like, we need to get out of here. And I'd never seen Larry be nervous like that before. The weird thing is I just don't think I lack the self-preservation gene that, because my whole brain is like thinking,
you should.
What the heck I was like, what the heck is that noise? What could be making that noise? And so we proceed back down the trail but the sound we continue to hear it, but it seems like it's above us on the trail or in the position, and I was behind Larry, and I would periodically turn around and look. I never saw anything. But we hear it the entire way to where we're parked. But at one point, and I didn't realize at the time what was Larry's point was, he said, we're being flanked. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, whatever it is following us. I get it. But no, later when we had a chance to talk about it, he heard the same percussion sound from. So basically, it kind of started from in the general location of where Larry heard his whistle, and then he also heard it coming from where I heard the whistle when we were coming in. And we get back, and I mean, we're dedicated Bigfooters, so we were going to deploy another recorder. We stopped to do that even though we were hearing this weird sound, and we're kind of both freaked out about it. I talk very calm about it now, but I also recorded it myself afterwards because we went back, and I'm talking really fast, and I'm jacked up. So, as we're deploying this other recorder, we hear there's a creek that we had crossed, and we hear this again directly across from us, across the creek. And so we kind of walked briskly to where the vehicles were parked, and we were actually deploying some more recorders, and we went around and did that. But Larry actually used not the panic mode, but he pushed the lock on his thing to beep his truck a few times as we were approaching it. So that was one of the weirdest, unexplained. And I shared that with Cliff Berkeley. He said, well, it sounds like it could be grouse, unless it was at night. And I said, no, it was at night. And then not grouse.
I had a chance to listen to the recording, and there's no way in Hades that's grouse. I don't know what it is. And others have listened to this, including David Ellis of the Olymp Project. And they have no idea. I mean, it's really, really freaking weird. I ain't going to lie. It's weird, and it's loud. And it's almost like vibrating, or boom.
There's more. I'm not doing it justice when I try to replicate it, because there was more reverberation to. Not that I felt anything, but there was more boom, boom. I mean, it was weird, and don't know what it was, but it got us out of the area quickly. Right.
And so leads me to my next question, Gunnar. You have been involved with the subject for so many years. You've had interviewed a ton of witnesses, been out to a ton of areas, excluding some of the more well-known pieces of evidence or stories out there. What is some of those more compelling evidence for Sasquatch being out there? Now, you've not had this visual like some of us have had, and so you're not tainted, I guess I could say that way. Not that I'm tainted, but you're going off of a lot of different things. So what is some of the more compelling things you've encountered personally, and those that you've interviewed and the stuff you've researched? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, where do you fall? Obviously, you're not a complete believer, but you give that 1% chance that it's not real. But I mean, what are some of the more compelling things?
That every eyewitness is misidentified or is crazy. I mean, and that's not even, honestly, I can't even say that because I know you. I know we've had two of our members of our group and a close associate of one of those members we've had 3 visual sightings in our research area in the last year. So it falls down to I either have to believe that what they're saying is true and that your encounter is true, and that, I mean, so really, I don't believe a Bigfoot. I think Bigfoot exists. I mean, and I believe and I trust. There's people that I trust implicitly that have had the confirmation experience. So the most compelling, the 14-foot Bigfoot story was interesting in the investigation. The witness was very sincere. And it was interesting. The side story that came out of that is they had a son, I don't know, say 5 or 6 years old, and they had a little duck pond, and then there was like an embankment, and the son told a story of being out cutting up apples and to feed to the ducks, and turning around and looking up on the top of the embankment and seeing 2 small white Bigfoots. And this was, he was either, rehearsed very well, or it was a sincere story. That one to me was pretty interesting because it was an association with another story in the very same area with a white Bigfoot. So that was interesting. My own experience is the Crescendo Night thing, off the charts. Jurassic Park Night, off the charts. The other, I've heard, we were camped up there last year, and there was a bunch of us. Ratman and Wallace was with us. Greg Razor was with us, and we were camped in various locations, and had got together centrally to have dinner. We go back up, and Greg had some sticks near his tent that were just kind of tossed there. Well, I get up there, and Ratman and Greg, come look at this. And the sticks were not random anymore. They looked to be very arranged, sitting right in front of Greg's tent, which, it could have been a person, I suppose, but the probability of somebody sitting there and doing that seemed so low. And then we went down to, you and Larry were camped, I call it, in an area called Far East, because it's the farthest point on this area. And your tent was unzipped, and your sleeping bag had been moved, and it was wet all down by the zipper, which was really odd. And subsequently, a few months ago, it's been that long, Larry had a sighting, and when I went and looked on Google Maps of where Larry's sighting was and where that camp was, it's like 800 feet from the sighting, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty interesting. The other, really interesting night up there was when Jess just had her daughter Grace up there, and I camped up there, and we're sitting around the fire and chitty-chatting, and Jess is telling a story, and all of a sudden there's a loud crash, like right behind her where she's sitting, and she like jumps across the fire and lands on the other side of where I was sitting. And I my first thought was I looked, where the crash was coming up, and then I started remember, like, is something coming out of the woods? Because it was so loud. And the next day when we went and looked, she remembered looking to her left from where she was sitting and seeing brush move, like something had hit the brush. And we actually found a rock, for maybe softball size, a little bigger, about
a little bit bigger,
within 3 feet of where she had been sitting. And so our best guess is that's what had made the loud crash.
Well, the interesting part that you kind of left out was that what...
Well, I haven't got to that yet. Yes.
Oh, yeah, please do.
It was actually
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Actually, later, I didn't realize it at the time, but later when I listened to the recording, she's telling the story of how she had worked with primates previously, and she goes, ooh, 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 and makes this agitated chimp sound, and it's immediately after that this crash takes place, which I found extremely interesting. I remember standing up once I stopped laughing at Jess's response. I stood up and made sounds into the woods, and nothing happened after that. But and this subsequently, we've had other stuff happen in that particular area. You saw a heat signature, or not a heat signature, that was actually night vision. You were watching something and you weren't quite sure, and then the next day it was gone. I mean, it was whatever was there was mobile. Yeah.
It's an area of high interest to me recently. Basically, what happened to you guys, and I kind of kicked it off, and so I decided, I'm going to spend some time in this camp, whether we have our group out there or not. I'll go out solo. I don't care. And subsequently, it now is my when I'm here in Oregon and in the Tillamook area, this is my area of interest. It's a weird little location. It makes a lot of sense, though, having reviewed it topographically and whatnot, as to the vantage point for something to come in and view you and still feel safe or still feel concealed. And I've had multiple experiences in this area now, both via therm and audio. That is it's an area of high interest to me. There's something going on here, and Cindy Cadell and I were out in this area a few months back and caught something on therm that was very very interesting. She had gone to bed, and I had stayed up a little bit later than her. This is after 11:30, and I decided to therm around some more and caught something on therm, and it was acting weird. It was it seemed large to me. It was from a distance, seemed to be focused on our direction, for lack of better terms, and it disappeared. And I thought, well, shoot, I don't want to be the only one to view this. Let me get Cindy. And I woke Cindy up, and she came out and couldn't find this subject that I was viewing at first, and eventually she did, and she was like, oh, I see it. And she was asking, I have this all on audio because I recorded the whole thing. Unfortunately, the therm I owned at the time, or we were using at the time, could not record, so that's unfortunate. I've subsequently fixed that. But she had seen this thing through the therm and was giving me questions like, could it be a rabbit, could it be this, or a raccoon? And I'm like, no, it can't be, because given, we're looking over bushes, you cannot see the ground, and raccoons don't move like that, especially, on a tree. And this thing was, behind a tree. I think I see two of them. And then, subsequently, like I said, she has since regressed and said, it may have been the shoulder. I saw this thing on both sides of the tree. And when she was viewing this subject, she yelled hello, and this thing immediately ducked down, straight down. She vocalized like hello right at it, and this thing dropped straight down, and she got freaked out a little bit. She's like, whoa! I just yelled hello, and it dropped straight down. That's just one incident in this area. Like you said, I had conducted an experiment where the night I had spent 2 nights in this camp, and the first night I got something really close to camp on audio. In fact, very close to my tent in this area that piqued my interest via the sounds and the movement and an impression I had found close to the camping area. And so I thought, well, you know what? It was actually very close to my truck. You can drive into this camp.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The ground was
so
tore up, like something. It was interesting.
Yeah, really close to. I had lots of audio out there, but I had placed an audio on my truck tire and flipped it upside down because this Tascam gives off a little red light. So I tipped it upside down to kind of conceal the light. It wasn't perfect, obviously. And given the audio that was recorded that I had listened to the next day and the impression there, I thought, you know what, I'm going to spend the night in my truck, leave my tent out there, leave my audio out there, and spend the night in the truck. I covered up all the windows and I had my FLIR. And I stayed awake most of the night. I did doze off, and I'd wake up, and then I viewed something on there's something on the hill. I viewed something on the hill above my tent in the area of interest where I've gotten other audio, especially recently. And at first I thought, oh, that's a stump. it was kind of I believe kind of a warm day, and so I thought it's just a stump, and I'm thinking, wait, there's no stump there. I'm viewing it, and this thing seemed to be swaying back and forth. I'm thinking, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. I'm tired. I'm imagining things. I'm watching this thing kind of like, it seemed to be a ball, hunched down, not standing up, just kind of like a big ball, like a stump. I'm thinking, so I'm coming up with everything possibly in my head that I could think of what it could be. Then realizing there's no stump there. Thinking, is it a bear? What's going on? There are bears in this area. So I'm, eventually I decide that, I got the creepy feeling that this thing can see me. The flare will go off a light. We can't see it, but I don't know what can. But we'll give off a light. So I'm thinking, this thing can see me. Even though I got my windows covered up, I'm peering out. So I decided to get out of my truck. And when I did, I with the flare, I didn't see it. It was gone. I got out, walked towards it. It was gone. And so it's another story, of course. What was on the hill, I have no idea. But that area there is freaking awesome because we seem to get something passing through there. And, I was out there 2 weeks ago and put audio right up in that exact area and and it was raining. Had something very much, which sounds to me very bipedal. David Ellis has since looked at this and kind of thought the same thing. Something big, bipedal, it's so loud. You hear it approach close to the recorder and do these grunts that sound very primate-like, pardon me, which I've recorded in the Olympics and other areas. And so I think, Gunnar, that this area is it's an area of high interest, giving the history, not just with the Tillamook Forest Group, but given the history in general, the sightings, the reports. And, it's kind of cool because we are working with some individuals, I won't say working with, but they're, working out there, and that's their job, that are very open to what we do. And that's kind of cool to me. It can kind of kill some of the conspiracies out there of individuals, involved with the parks and recreation and BLM and everything else that are, people want to say are hiding this creature. And I disagree. Especially being involved in the Olymp Project and some of the people working with us. I mean, what are your thoughts on the whole conspiracy thing?
Oh, I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what the. They may have a unstated policy, but then you're going to, when you're dealing with individuals, they seem to be. You'd have to have a curiosity if you knew, or had some. Suspicion that there was something that existed. I mean, just because you work for a government agency, it's not Men in Blackish kind of, I think these are people that we've gotten to know. Again, Larry is a very good networker. He talks to everybody and makes friends with, and has made contact with people that work in this area, and they're pretty open about stuff. So I don't see,
including reports. They've shared many reports with us. Yeah, and even recently, I believe they were saying that there have been some reports of audio stuff going on by other people camping in the area. So it's at least, if you get to know people, when I was on an expedition with the BFRO, we had a forest person come into the area where our camp was, and talk to Matt Moneymaker and suggest an area that we go, because there was an area that where there was a lot of old growth, and that that people in the forest department did not like to go. So, if you worked in the forest that much, you've got to have some kind of idea. And there's got to be conversation but it may also be something that people don't share with people that they work with. And if you work in the forest department, you don't want people to think you're crazy. And you can work
you can be in the woods for a long period of time and not have any kind of experience. It's also interesting is when you start talking to people that hunt a lot, or even like Les Stroud when he was doing his Bigfoot series, talked about things that he had heard and put off to something else, not giving it any. Bigfoot wasn't, a part of it is your frame of reference of Bigfoot. If you don't have any concept, or you just think it's, a funny thing that shows up on news programs once in a while, you don't attribute anything that you hear to Bigfoot. But if you have a context and hear a tree fall over when you approach a certain area, or you hear a scream that doesn't sound like something you've heard before, you have a reference point, So.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. And I think that happens a lot with the non-reported stuff in campers. That perfect example is, and even in our area, that we research in the Tillamook area, there's campgrounds out there and stuff. And one of my favorite things to do is go into these campground forums and the campground sites and just review people's experiences. And lo and behold, just like many of the hunter forums that have nothing to do with Sasquatch, you get Sasquatch reports. You get people going, hey, have you had this happen to you? Or, I'm never going back there again because something came up and screamed at our tent, or this and that. And they're like, it's the craziest experience I've ever had. Or I had bipedal stuff, or something was throwing rocks at us. That never get reported, but are shared in these private forums that have nothing to do with Bigfoot. People think people have a Bigfoot experience and they're going to share it with the BFRO or other groups, or keep it to themselves. Well, a lot of times, like the hunting forums I listen or review, they're looking for answers. They have no idea what's going on. They've been out hunting for 30 years in certain areas, and they never had anything happen. And then this one time, bam, they had this sighting or this crazy experience. And usually, 9 times out of 10, they get laughed out of the forum or made fun of, and you could tell they're honest. And why subjugate yourself to posting something like that if you're not going to get, you're going to get blasted, but they're so curious about it. A lot of times they don't even know where to go. So,
I think that's been my experience with witnesses. In fact, Larry, when shortly after I met him, I don't know if it was the first time I met him or some time shortly thereafter, told me about an experience that he'd had 30 years before, where he was out scouting elk or hunting elk and was trailed by something in the woods for like 2 miles or something. He's hiking back, getting back to his car, but he would catch glimpses of something moving through the woods, and it's crashing, and he never got a glimpse, and he had not told anybody in 30 years. I was the first person. I just got that kind of face, I guess. But I've had similar experiences with other witnesses that. Right. You think about that. It's a pretty shocking. It's got to be especially if you're not a Bigfoot researcher, which there's very few in the entire human population of people that are really Bigfoot researchers. There's Bigfoot enthusiasts, or Bigfoot that they find Bigfoot entertaining or have heard of Bigfoot, but most, it's got to be in the 90 percentile of people don't really believe that Bigfoot exists. So to have a sudden shocking experience of being face to face with something you didn't know exists, that you thought was a funny thing in a news program, or wasn't that guy was pushing around the fake Bigfoot and charging people to see it, or I saw it in a freezer on, or Bigfoot died because somebody who admitted to making tracks, Bigfoot, and is promoted that way in news. They proved that, there's some guy that had said he was in that suit for that movie, so it's, a lot of times people that have an experience don't know where to talk to, and another person that I talked to about their encounter had it had an experience like 30 years before, and had initially told some of their family members and was made fun of. So they shut up about it. They didn't tell another person for all that time. And like, you got to think that what do I do with this information? You know, if you've had an experience like that and you don't, where do I turn to? Most people don't. You know, some people can go online and find the BFRO, or they know somebody, or find some investigator, but a lot of people don't have any context and are afraid to tell people because they don't want to be thought of as crazy or you know, or a liar. So
right, and you know what that reminds me of, Gunnar, is the town hall. You know, we got offered opportunity to do a town hall sort of setup, kind of like what Finding Bigfoot does, but with the hopsquatch, Guy Edwards hopsquatch event here in Portland, and we had a freaking huge turnout. Now, one of the things that really stuck out to me, well, first of all, the amount of people that showed up. Secondly, was the amount of people, you know, that spoke up, that were interested in the subject, those that had encounters. And we're talking about a non-Finding Bigfoot event. You know, you know, this isn't going to be shared publicly. This is an event set up here in Portland where people came from Washington, you know, different parts of Washington, and I think even a few from Northern California, but mostly Oregon and Washington, that shared their encounters that were very interesting and compelling. But yet, you know, a lot of these people, not only did they seem honest, but you could tell they don't really want to be up there, but they wanted to be up there because they knew what they had experienced. Some of them I had talked to previously, and some I had not. You know, they just showed up. You know, and we did this town hall event, and it was a huge turnout, and the stories and whatnot were just amazing. I was shocked.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, that was a kick-ass. That was fun, and that was fun. Yeah, I appreciate Guy trusting us in trusting his event to us for but I think he was happy to get a week or a month where he got to go play on the beach while we took care of, you know, got in the driver's seat, and it was a blast. And I appreciated all the folks that came out and shared their stories. It was cool. But yeah, there is that, you know, people. I think a lot of witnesses want to be able to tell somebody, but they also want to be able to tell somebody without being judged, and that's a big role for me as a investigator when I talk to a witness, is that it's their story. It's not my story. It's their story. So it's listening without judgment. You know, do I gauge, you know, whether or not I think what they're telling me is factual? Yes, but I'm not going to, you know, unless they say, well, I saw Bigfoot piloting a UFO and he went over 7-Eleven and stopped and got a Slurpee, and I mean, you know, it's obvious BS. I'm going to let them tell their story. And I've had people that we invite to be on the show that, you know, they want to know that they're not going to be exploited, you know, or made fun of. We're not inviting you on the show to beat you up. We want to hear your experience, and we appreciate that you're willing to come and publicly. And we've had people on the show that have not shared their experience publicly before. And I always appreciate somebody entrusting me, or in case of the Monster X, with their encounter. I mean, it's for some people it's a life-altering. For everybody, I think, that has a confirmation experience, it's a life-altering kind of deal. I mean, if you're in a small club, the people that know that Bigfoot is not, you know, Harry and the Hendersons is not it's not a suit, you know, that somebody stuffed in a freezer. There is a living, breathing animal out there that people on occasion experience, and there is a group of crazy people that dedicate a particular amount of time to chasing them or researching them. I don't really think it's chasing so much, but
right.
So, and I think we, back to our group is in recent events. One of the things that people could ask us, and you and I have talked about this, is, well, if you're researching Bigfoot and so and so had a visual encounter, how come you didn't get video of it? Of the 3 visuals that happened in our research area, the first one was totally unexpected, and really wasn't. It was more of a casual camping trip than a Bigfoot research outing. The second one, which occurred after that, was by Larry, and he wasn't even Bigfooting. He was out for a Sunday drive, basically, and then the third one was not even one of our members per se. They were out doing ATV stuff and were coming back from somewhere and had not one but 2 witnesses.
2 witnesses, yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is how close in proximity that encounter took place to Larry's encounter. So now
it's right there, basically.
Yeah, it's basically all you had to do was turn them around because it's like Larry was driving.
To touch upon that subject, and I'll make this brief, but while we were, I attended the Olympic Project expedition, where we included members. This is up in Washington, our Olympic site, where we included members from the public to join us. And one of the experiments we did, which was we had asked everybody if they wanted to do this, and they were very enthusiastic about it, was Tom Baker had a Bigfoot costume, a really cruddy Bigfoot costume. And I actually talked about this on West German Sasquatch Chronicles show, but you'll hear it here again real quick. The experiment was Tom Baker was going to dress up in his costume, go out into the woods, and we were pretty far out there. And he wanted to see, we had a large group of people, he wanted to see who could take a photograph of him when he was crossing a road, in the woods, standing still, just acting like a supposed Bigfoot would do. For me, it was more human-like, but still knowing that he was going to be out there somewhere. They didn't know where, they didn't know when he was going to appear, but they were supposed to try and take a picture. And he was spotted from time to time. Sometimes people walked right by him, including myself. Other times we saw him. But I'll tell you what, the interesting thing was everybody already had their cameras out. They were ready to go. And this is very interesting to me, and should be interesting to the audience out there as to why we don't have really good photos nowadays, even when you see something, was the fact that everybody already had their cameras, cell phones, cameras out. Well, Tom, in his costume, which stuck out like a sore thumb because it was not the same, it was a very poor color. It was kind of a orangey, it looked like a bad Bigfoot costume, and the colors didn't match anything out there. Yes, this was during the day, in fact.
Okay.
And the colors didn't match anything out there. There's lots of stumps and everything else, but it was a lighter browny orange color, and it didn't match anything out there. So he would cross a road, and everyone, like I said, people walked right by him at times, but when they did see him and tried to take a picture, it came out like a blob squatch. You got a blur. Right. You got a piece of it. And so the whole exercise was to show people, including ourselves, we learned a lot at the Olympic Project about this, as well as our guests, that it's difficult. If something's running by you or something from a distance, to take a picture, and you're already prepared to do so. We're not talking about people who see something and fidget for their phone or camera. We're not people prepared to take a picture, knowing that they were going to see something or possibly see something.
Right.
And they failed. I failed. They failed. And so it was a great exercise in the fact to show people, including ourselves, that it's that difficult. Okay?
Yeah,
when a sighting occurs, it's
you
that
can't
fast.
underestimate.
9 times out of 10, you're not prepared to take a picture.
Right. Even if you have a camera, you got to think about the psychology of what's going on too. Even if you had a camera at the ready, and you see a Bigfoot, what's your brain doing? I mean, your brain is processing what you're seeing, and most encounters are not like extended. You're talking about very brief encounters that last seconds, perhaps, or if you're lucky, it's minutes. But even if you have a camera, your brain has got to be like processing.
Yeah, I've done this with bear. I've seen a bear. I went to get my camera and it was gone. It's not rocket science. You need something to stand still. It takes a human and a subject to have a scenario, and then you have to hope that subject stays still. Guess what? It's a needle in a haystack, and like you say, Gunnar, that needle's moving. The same thing with trail cameras. It's not mind-boggling to me whatsoever that we don't have these clear pictures. And I don't buy into a whole lot of the blob squatches, but it shows me that even when somebody's prepared and really knows something's going to be there, it doesn't pan out because Sasquatch isn't around that long. We're talking about, a human in a costume that sticks out like a sore thumb, and we can't get a good picture. Hello. So, yeah.
Hello, McFly.
Hello. Yeah.
No,
bye.
And we
bye.
did that experiment up there last year where what was there? 3 of the Olympic Project members that
4.
went and hid in the woods. 4.
Yeah,
and they
4.
were yelling. And we couldn't
This
find
was
them.
at night with Therm.
Right. We could not. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and same scenario. In fact, Todd Neese almost stepped on one of the individuals. I think it was Derek that was laying alongside a log. Yeah.
Yes.
So people get so blown away that we don't have all this stuff. I don't. I don't think there's that many Sasquatch out there, and I think just like every living animal, it takes a perfect scenario to get this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we've talked about. It's interesting is that we've talked previously because I some time ago about getting dash cams that were in and out of our road stop.
I'm losing you, Gunnar.
Whoops. Hello?
Yeah, there you go. Losing you for a second.
No, how many reports are and basically just like we have an audio protocol where we're recording all the time. We need to introduce a video protocol where we're recording all the time because it's going to be a chance. It's unlikely that Bigfoot's going to walk in where you're camping and shake your hand and pose for pictures. It's going to be when you least expect it, as has happened twice to members of our research group. They're like, don't. First of all, after a while, you kind of you can get complacent that, I'm not probably going to see a Bigfoot today, but I can tell you that since Larry had his sighting, I purchased a window cam, a dash cam thing, and every time that I'm going and coming now, I'm going to be recording. And I know
Gunnar,
you have one. Go ahead.
We all prepared. We're down to our last less than a minute basically. What do you want to leave the audience with? What's real quick? What do you want to leave the audience with? And what is the Tillamook group about? And what's Monstrex about in 30 seconds?
The Tillamook group is about collecting data and being there at the day of discovery and being scientific as much as we can to in the pursuit of Bigfoot. Monstrex Radio. For me, it's an honor to be allowed the forum and the opportunity to participate and talk to people. For me, it's just fun to talk to people about Bigfoot. It's something I'd be doing anyway, and I get to do it with a friend of mine, and we get to talk to really cool people about a subject that I'm passionate about, and I know that you're passionate about. It's just something to do that I enjoy. So.
Well, Gunnar, it's It's been an honor and a privilege to talk to you on the opposite side of the table tonight, and very fascinating show. I hope the listeners out there enjoyed this show as much as I have, and we look forward to having you listen in on our next show next week. We really appreciate the viewership, listenership. And for Gunnar Monson and Shane Corson, I want to thank you all. You all have a wonderful weekend. And that was a whoop for Gunnar, I hope.
It was me. No Sasquatches have been harmed in the filming in this show or recording in this show. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you for joining me on the opposite end of the table, Gunnar.
You bet.
And we'll all see you next week.
Thanks, Shane.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Today, Bridget Griffin shared a video of her daily yoga routine, 2 self-help articles, and her new blog called Build Your Inner Bridge with Bridge. Girl, your sharing has turned into oversharing. No worries, Bridge. Geico has some info worth sharing with your 7 blog followers, like how you could save money on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim just by visiting geico.com. How's that for building your inner bridge? Bridge? Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.